Picture this. The 2007 to 2009 original fantasy era castle theme never got discontinued. What sets would we be looking at now? What new designs would have come out of the continued life and support given to the theme? What new factions would have joined? How would the world building have changed? What absolutely amazing builds and minifigures could have been made or continued for the present day? This is what I'm trying to answer by creating my very own custom fantasy castle themed sets and waves of sets to imagine the what ifs of one of LEGO's very best themes to have ever existed. Vehicles, playsets, bases, castles, siege weapons, creatures, all of this and much, much more. All with the goal of being able to build a world that revolves around a medieval time with fantasy undertones and details. I would love for all of you to join me for the ride, as I am excited to share all of my ideas and visions for what could have been and what possibly could be. Thank you all very much for clicking on this video. I really do appreciate it. I hope you all enjoy. I would also really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, as making these sets, coming up with the ideas, making the videos, posting it, editing, doing all that takes a very, very long time. So I would really appreciate it for any comments, for a like, subscribe, sharing it, all of that YouTube stuff. You guys know the gist. I would appreciate it very much. Again, thank you for clicking on this video. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So here we have the actual skeleton weapon wagon. As you can see, I kind of just took inspiration from what I thought a normal wagon of the medieval period would look like and just added a spin to it, basically putting these little rib cages on the back, because that's probably something that the skeletons would have. Like, this just makes sense. This is something that they would have. They would have a giant carriage, but instead of like the tarp or the canvas, it would just be a giant rib cage. So I kind of figured I would try that, and I think these pieces right here work really well for it, and I think overall the carriage looks really good. I did have to kind of change up the width of the back wheels here, you can see, to make them wider, just to actually make room for these rib cage pieces. So the back looks a little wider, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The front right here can turn, basically meaning that this whole thing can actually turn. As you can see, obviously it would not turn like this though. It would turn on that little swivel piece there. This is just kind of for show, but it is able to turn, and obviously the chains would be connected to it. I actually thought I did a pretty good job with how I connected it, because since I was using two skeleton horses, it was going to be kind of interesting to actually try to connect them. But I think I actually have a pretty good system working here, basically, where if you can hear, if I can get this to work, if you can see there, I use those two bars with the studs on the end, basically, and then connect them to some clips, and then I connect that to two chains, which then connects to this piece right here. This right here isn't too tricky design wise. Obviously it just kind of sits there. The chains just kind of connect to the bottom of that plate. There probably could be a better way to put those there, but for now that's just all I thought of, and it looks pretty good for what it is. The rest of the chains then connect to the sides here. Obviously they would not go into the piece like these two are, and they would also be falling to the ground, but since the chains in the studio are weird, they are just floating in midair like that right now, which is whatever, it's fine. But that's not the point. The point being that I think it works to connect the actual horses to the wagon and to make it make sense for the skeletons. Like, this is how I think the skeletons would do this. If the trolls had something like this, their connections would be very different, and they would probably have trolls taking the wagon instead of horses. And then obviously for the knights, they would have probably more humane ways, I'll just put it, instead of doing it this way. The lanterns and the flags too also add a nice touch, and I chose black skeleton horses just kind of to make the whole wagon pop more. And because we haven't seen too many of those when the actual theme came out, so it's really nice to see those guys again. The helmet you don't see too often. This is like one of the older helmets for the actual cab driver, but I figured it worked pretty well for him. So I think he looks pretty good. It's just a normal design for the skeletons. Really no need to change, except maybe making the arms a little better so they don't crack and break super easily. But, you know, that might not happen. Look at the battle droid for Star Wars. We've had that same design for over 20 years now, so the skeleton design probably would not change either. This wagon can hold 2 crates, as seen here, and they can just come right off, you can see, and then they get connected by 2 of those 2x3 jumper plates, or 3x1 jumper plates with 2 studs on top. So I feel like that works pretty well for actually putting the crates on. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good addition to the new era of the theme, and I think it works pretty well, and overall I like it. So I hope you guys did too, and yeah, back to you in the studio. This was the skeleton weapon wagon and is one of the first sets that I've ever created in my new plan to try to create my own fantasy era castle theme. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, do all that other YouTube stuff, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.